What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. We have completed the full set of online qualifiers for the upcoming major in Florida. Not a lot of surprises on who made winners bracket and who made losers bracket, but it is time to make our tier list before this event. Let's dive in and take a look at how we're going to rank these 12 teams. There's a lot of pre-major content I'm doing. As always, we're going to start off with this one, so let's see where everybody's at. All right, if you are new to this video series that I do of these tier lists, you're probably like, why don't you do the letter thing, blah, 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 blah. I thought about doing the letter thing. I've hated it for the last couple of years. And this year, I've been like, maybe I do it, but I actually got some suggestions in the last video on how to tweak this slightly. So you're going to see some adjustments if you watch the previous videos, but let me show you how we do it. The way it goes is Sunday regulars is generally the top 4 teams this year. It's the top 4. And I'm going to be honest with you, for the sake of this video, I may attempt to order these teams, but really don't overthink it. I think all 4 of these teams have a very good chance to win. I had a second tier here where it says making progress. It used to be potential contenders. Because the top 4 is so far ahead of everybody, this is really going to be like the other winners bracket teams, or at least some of them that I think have a chance to, if the right draw happens, maybe get top 4, probably top 6 of this tournament. Work to do is going to be everybody else. I think that could place like top 6, top 8, and then missing pieces are teams that I think need to make a roster change and are probably getting last at this tournament. So I think for the sake of, I'm going to do this in a little bit of a weird order. So I apologize. This is going to be like a little bit trickier to follow, but I think with the new tier and making progress, I think we can kind of adjust accordingly on who we want to put in that tier. So let's start with the Vegas Legion. I think are going to be the first team I want to put in that tier. And they had a very solid week. 2 victories, one over Seattle and one over Carolina. Vegas solidly finishing in the middle of the pack in the winners qualifiers. They made up a lot of points this split, and they look like amongst the bottom 8 teams, the most disciplined team. Now, do they have the talent, the consistency, the slang to be the top 4 teams? Seen them play a couple. I don't think so, but as far as the ability to navigate a interesting winners bracket 1 matchup, which I'll cover, in my major 2 video later on this week, I do think Vegas has a very good chance to make it deep in the split, make it deep at the event, and if the right draw happens, get top 4 if one of these top 4 teams gets upset. So I really like what Vegas has done, and I think they're on path. Have a pretty good event. The next team I'm going to move up here is the LA Thieves. They actually finished off 4-3, and I got to tip Thieves because I'm going to read to you their full schedule of results they had during this play. They lost to OPTIC. They beat Miami. They beat Rocker, who, going in that Rocker series, we thought that Rocker team was very good. They lost to FaZe. They beat Vegas. They beat LAG, and they lost to Toronto. I'm still going to put Vegas in front of Thieves, even though Thieves beat them, just because I think Vegas are playing a little bit better. It's clear to me that this Thieves team can really get a handle on teams below them. I think their biggest weakness is control. They're just not a great control team right now, which kind of sucks because their old team was good in control, but wasn't good at hard point. Now they're like decent hard point, tough at control, but the S&D has been really good. So I like where Thieves is at. Draw wise, they are playing up against FaZe in winners round 1, so I really don't expect them to get much out of that matchup, to be honest. But go dropping the losers bracket, I could see this team going on a little bit of a run and having a chance. I think a minimum to get in top 6. I think a chance at top 4, but it's a good turnaround for Thieves. I still think, by the way, though, I want to put an asterisk on this because I said like missing pieces or teams need a roster change. I really don't think that Thieves with Afro is going to work long term, and I do think that if I were Thieves, I really would consider seeing if there's any player that I like after this split, a sub player who I might want to bring in for Marcus and give him a try, because I think if you can push this team a little bit to the next level with a really good quality sub player, I think that they could make some waves, because right now he's playing kind of iffy, and I don't really. Yeah, I just don't see them always being at this level, and I think raising their floor, this would be a good opportunity to do it. We're going to move the next team up now to this tier, and that's going to be the Boston Breach. Finished 3-4 this split, which I kind of respect out of them for, grinding this one out with the nice victory against Seattle on Sunday, a pretty dominant 3-0 victory. They didn't have any, wins during the stage where I was like, oh man, they beat some like amazing team. Their victories were against Carolina, Minnesota Rocker, and obviously the Seattle win that I mentioned, but they, took OPTIC to a game 5 round 11, which I'll tip, but they got slammed by FaZe and slammed by New York and by Vegas. So that's why I can't really move them into the making progress here, because I'll be honest, this Boston team, I think things are a little bit too chaotic. Respawn. The search is getting a little bit better over time. I think they're starting to get a handle on it, but the respawn seems a little bit iffy. And I think from my perspective, I think a lot of it is on Snoop. I mean, we saw a play. We were doing the flank yesterday. I'm recording this Monday morning on a P5 Karachi where they got a decent hold on the hill, but Snoop was in a great position and he just didn't give information to his team. Like, he's got to be able to call out and communicate and be able to slay, I think it makes a lot of situations really kind of horrible for the other three players. So they can really work on that with Snoop. I kind of like their concepts on the map. I don't think they've got the talent yet to beat a top 4 team. They do have a particularly tricky draw, getting the 7th seed going into this where they're going to play New York. And I don't see them beating New York, but obviously there's a lot on the line for Preston Nissim as former, players on the New York Subliners team, but they dropped down to the losers bracket. And I think they can make some waves, but if it comes down to them versus like a Vegas or a Thieves type deal, I don't know. But I think they can get decent top 8 minimum placing at this event. I think dead last would be extremely disappointing. Oh man, it's a mess. It's a mess on who I want to move up here next. We're going to do Carolina before I do Miami. I think this is kind of like, this is a weird one for me. Because there are teams that work to do that I think also maybe need a roster change. So I almost want to actually just kind of do this and put Boston in its like own tier, because I think Boston is not going to want to drop Snoop, and I don't think they're going to end up making a roster change or split. But even though I put Carolina next, I still think like the biggest problem with this Carolina team, now they missed out on winners bracket by tiebreakers, going 2-5. Miami made it going 2-5 in the last spot. Anyway, we'll get to them in a second. Is I just a slaying at the AR is just not good enough on this Carolina team. I don't know what else to say. It's purely just about getting kills. Like they just got outclassed by Vegas and outslayed. And Clay had a terrible series. And it's either Clay or Fellow getting smoked in every series. So going in this event, starting in losers bracket, like they got to get better contribution from their ARs or it's going to be a dead last placement. And then I think for me, and we can move to Miami next. And yeah, they made winners bracket. And you're going to be like, Ben, why are you putting them, behind Carolina? This Miami team is so inconsistent that I don't want to like overthink the last 2 matches they played against, Minnesota Rocker, who are really, really, really struggling right now. And we'll get to them. You'll hear in a second, but as well as against Carolina, who they were able to win. I just think Carolina is a little more kind of upside when we go to land. This Miami team, like I don't quite see it. So I know people might argue it either way, which way, but right now I'd put Miami behind Carolina. Now Miami's going to play OPTIC winners round 1. Interestingly, I actually think that they may have a shot in that matchup purely just on the emotion of, playing in front of their home crowd. The history of when this franchise plays against OPTIC in winners round 1, they've had a good history. We'll see, but other than that, I don't expect Miami to go super deep in this tournament unless they can find a vein of form. And yeah, they played good the last 2 weeks, but I want to make sure they do it at land first before I really slide them up. I don't want to like, maybe I'm just a hater. Like I don't want to hop on the Vamos Bucks train just yet. And honestly, if they don't have a good placing, I think Real's probably coming in this lineup. All right, how do I want to order these last 3 teams? And then we'll jump back to the top. I think we'll keep them as is. Nah, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna put LAG in front. So let's start with the Minnesota Rocker. They had 1 series this week. It was against Miami and they got smoked. I mean, I don't know what you want to say. Unless this team gets on some crazy run at this event, I think Big Wake is probably the player I'd swap out on this team. And we'll get to in another video probably later on this week about Founders players I'm looking forward to can compete this weekend. I think have a very good shot to potentially get called up next week onto some of these teams. But for the Minnesota Rocker, it's been a real tough stage. And I think it's clear that one person probably needs to step up or they will be dropped. Now, we got to tip LAG. Lost to Thieves. Thieves finally, exercised some demons there in that matchup. And then LAG had a nice victory against the Atlanta FaZe team that decided not to show up on Sunday. But LAG played great in that series, regardless of what FaZe was doing. I thought LAG's concepts and the way they were playing, especially in search, I really liked LAG. So if you're an LAG fan, there is a little bit of momentum you can take into, losers bracket right now. They are going to have to play Thieves or FaZe in that losers round 1. And it's going to be a tough matchup either way. But this LAG team can win the series, get top 8, and then from there kind of figure out the roster change you want to make. You can kind of salvage this season. But I don't want to overthink too much about one victory. I want to tip it and move them in front of Seattle. But this team has still has a lot of issues. And honestly, in that FaZe series, they went up 2-0 and then got slammed the next 2 maps and clutched up in the search. But, they almost kind of blew that one up pretty bad. And then last, we got the Seattle search before you hop into the top 4. I mean, this team's just a mess. I think concept-wise and gameplay-wise, just unclear on the map what they're trying to do in respawns. They look fine in a decent search team, but the respawns are just horrific. And I think they need to go completely and utterly back to the drawing board on respawn after this event. Otherwise, they're just not going to make champs. I don't know what to say. It might be a personnel issue. Maybe they make a roster change. I don't know. I mean, obviously, there's been some accusations that Alec is, kill whoring and this and that. I do think Alec definitely sometimes has to play his life because the map is chaotic, and he's going to misread those situations. And yeah, I think sometimes he is going to kind of end up positive when everybody else is kind of running around being reactive on the map. It is what it is. It kind of swings either way that way with Alec. But I think the other three players got to play some kind of semblance of structured Call of Duty, because that Karachi hardpoint I watched this weekend was, it was not great, man. It was just Kyler running around making random plays and getting lucky occasionally, but mostly getting slammed. Like, I don't know what Seattle's trying to do on the map, man. And they're going to have a real tough time winning a series on land with the way they play right now. All right, so let's hop back to the top four. And I don't really know how to order this. I'm going to put Optic first, obviously, because they are undefeated, and therefore I guess we put them in the first spot. I think like all the top four teams, they all have something to work on. And so I'm going to use this sort of time to talk about what they're good at and what they're bad at. So the good for Optic is you went undefeated. You had to grind out some of these series. They iced up game 5s, iced up round 11s twice during this stage in game 5. And you got to respect it. We got to tip it. The control has been pretty much phenomenal, even though they're dodging high rise, which is going to continue to be an auto veto for them unless they've really improved. They want to try it. The search has been good, although everybody's playing them on Karachi. So I would really like to not see people play Optic on their best search map, but it is what it is when you're New York and you're auto banning Rio S&D and Toronto not playing Invasion, like whatever. And the hard points have been good, and it's not really for much for me to pick away at that. I think, again, and I've said it time and time again with this Optic team, if we look at sort of the matchups that might kind of swing against the top four, it's the weakness in Terminal S&D. You saw it against New York. It's the weakness at times on Invasion. It's the weakness at times on High Rise. And so far, this team's been able to dodge that in a couple of these series online. But when we get to LAN, I really want to see teams attack this S&D map pool for Optic, because I'm not convinced that it's all that good. I mean, to be honest, they are 7-1 on Karachi. You got to respect it. But if I do the math right now and you count the other maps, they have 13 losses and they have 5 wins. So, I don't know. I feel like the veto strategy is pretty obvious here against Optic, but they're always going to be a hard out with their respawn prowess. And obviously, I expect them to grit. And I think to probably make it, I think if you're Optic, I have more faith in them at this event than I do at Major 1 to make it to Grand Finals. It's going to kind of depend on how they play really on Saturday and Sunday, because I expect them to get through their winners round matchup. Even though it's against the Miami-Florida combo, which is giving them passive winners bracket, I just don't see those guys really standing a chance against them in winners round 1. I'm going to put New York in 2 because they beat FaZe. I'm going to do it as a tiebreaker. Obviously, for New York, they finally lost a game 5 in this series. And again, I was really surprised that New York has not played Rio Search. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of playing Optic on their best search map, but we're squaring up, and it didn't work out for New York. I mean, what New York has done great during the split, to be honest, is respawn. Hardpoint has been really good, although I think the only map they haven't really played this split is Karachi. They played it once and it didn't really go well, but they look good on the other maps, and you can kind of dodge the Karachi thing. It's not an issue. Control has been good. Karachi control, I've been a little bit iffy out of them, but again, you can kind of dodge it if you want. The S&D map pool is great. The only thing is they're not playing Rio Search, and I would like to see them try it during this event if the opportunity arises for them to get it going. But I think really the only thing for New York, the only weakness for me is, they don't look as invincible once Skid Row Hardpoint gets out of some of these series. So they are, beatable there. But I think New York has been a good enough search team to be able to grind through it. Control is, it's been better this split, but I can see against an Optic and a FaZe that is not a game mode that I would favor New York in. The swing game mode. Once I see these top teams figure out how to get 3-1 victories and really take the other teams, hardpoint map pick or map 4 in general, I think that control issue is going to get exposed. But New York's in a good spot going this event. I would hope they don't get dead last at this. I think they're in a good position to make it in this tournament. Coming up in a couple days. All right, next up we have Atlanta FaZe. Surprise loss to LAG. They were trolling with the map set in this series, picking team A and picking sub base, and again they look terrible on the map. And I don't quite understand their concepts and what they're trying to execute on sub base. Why they just don't put themselves in position to get trades, to get pinched on. It just seems like Abizi and Draws are just completely and utterly uncomfortable on that map. So until they figure it out, they can't really play it, and that's a huge weakness for them in the vetoes. Other than that, map pool wise, like the rest of the map pool is pretty good. I mean, they squared up on Terminal Search during the split and looked great on it. The control, I mean, has been incredible. They haven't lost one this entire split. which is good. So I think if your phase, look, the LAG series is what it is, but I think you really like your map pool going in this event. And if your search can be a little bit better, because they lost 2 S&Ds to LAG on high res and invasion, which is interesting. If you can be a little more consistent in search, again, these guys are always going to be hard out these events. There's a reason that they like don't place worse than third. I think they're going to be there or thereabouts come Sunday. Then last, I'm going to leave Toronto Ultra in fourth here. We talked about the one matchup they had against Thieves this week. Just kind of ho-hum victory. Not really much to think about. Obviously, that was one for Cammy, according to the Toronto guys, to get Cammy's trade. I think for Toronto, they look like the best hardpoint team in the game. They only dropped 2 hardpoint masses in entire split. They dropped 1 in stage 1. They dropped 2 during this split. Control has been okay. I mean, they're still I think their high-rise control looks a little better, which I actually really like. They made some progress there. But my biggest concern with Toronto is the search. They've just been really poor at S&D this entire split. They tried terminal S&D, that didn't work out. Rio hasn't been that great for them. They tried high-rise again, it didn't work out. They're still a good Karachi team. They're still a good invasion team. There's some weaknesses in that S&D map pool that I think teams like FaZe in New York and OPTIC are going to be especially suited to really attack against Toronto. So that's what I'm looking forward to see with Toronto, and that's why I'm putting them in fourth, because I think unlike the other 3 teams, Toronto has a sub 500 record in S&D during the split, and they lost to OPTIC and FaZe as well during the split. Now, I would say that Toronto, of the winners, the top 4 teams, has, I think, the hardest match in playing Vegas, in the winners bracket. But I would think that Toronto would be able to win that. They did play earlier this split, and they beat Vegas in 4 maps. So I'm still going to probably pick Toronto in the bracket, but I won't be like mega shocked if, Vegas really show up, play good respawn, this goes to game 5, and maybe it doesn't go Toronto's way. But I think these guys, even if they have a surprise loss to Vegas, they're just going to slam through losers bracket. And I think they're going to be in the mix on Sunday. I just don't think right now that they're in the best form of the 4, in my honest opinion, at the moment. Yeah, this is how I'm ranking everybody. Y'all are probably like, why aren't Carolina and Miami higher? I just think the teams all on the bottom 5 to me are just like not very good. I think Boston's like in its tier of own, where I don't think they're that good either, but I could kind of see conceptually what they're trying to do. But I think there's a good chance they fall flat at this event. And then I think Vegas and Thieves are kind of clear ahead of the pack, and then obviously the top 4. So that's kind of how I feel about the rankings right now. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think. As always, like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. A lot of pre-major content coming your way this weekend. We'll see you guys on the next one.